Alright, so what we're going to be doing today, we need to create a coal load for this hopper. This is just a little hopper I painted up black and I've got some decals on it. But I need to make a removable coal load that will fit in here, that can then just pop out, so it can run either loaded or empty. And the first step to do that is I cut a piece of black cardstock. It doesn't have to be black, I just happen to have some. Because this is going to get covered in coal anyways, but just to give a stiff board to work with. I have these sheets labeled and pre-cut to the right size for the width of the car, so I'm doing a 55-ton 2-bay. You can see that that fits in the car in this direction, and it's a little bit of a loose fit. I don't want it to be tight. So the next step is to cut it across at the right width to fit inside the car. And I have created this little jig to help me with that. I've got the 55-ton cars labeled right there. I just insert that up to the backstop, and then these will give me a guide for where to put the ruler, and then I can just cut along that line. There we go. And so that gives me something to build on that will fit in here. And it's just resting on the slope sheets, and so you can see there's about a 1/16 of an inch that is down below the edge of the sills. That gives me some room where I can heap up the coal load on top of it. Let me go ahead and pull that out. Using this cardstock material rather than rather than something else. I guess you could also use like a balsa wood or basswood, I should say, something a little stiffer. But like a sheet styrene probably wouldn't work very well, mostly because this is a little bit porous, and so you'll see the material that I use to keep up the ballast will adhere to this better than it would to a flat styrene that wouldn't absorb anything. So anyways, we have this ready to go, and I'll show you what we do next after I clean up some space here. Now, the secret to my coal loads is that I like for them to be removable using a magnet. This is an adhesive-backed refrigerator magnet, basically, long tape of it, and I cut that off and I'll put that on here and bury it under the coal load. And then I have this retractable wand that is magnetized that will be able to I can use that. You can see it extends out to about 24 inches so that I can reach back on where the coal mine is. I can use this to gently lift up the load, lift it up enough that I can grab an end and pull it out. And that's why I want it to be loose and not a tight fit, so that it'll just readily come up. So the first thing is I'll need to cut some small strips of this. I usually do 2 that will be under the major humps. So I'll put like one roughly here, one here, and then this will get buried. And so you can see here, it's a very strong connection right now, but once that's buried under some coal, it'll be a little bit weaker, but it'll still be enough that it'll lift it up out of the car. Then what I use to form that load, set that aside. This is a pre-mixed grout, and you can see I've barely used any of it thus far. And I'll use an old plastic spoon to apply that. I'll use the back edge of the spoon as kind of a trowel and scoop a little bit out, and then just kind of roll that on. And you can see I'm kind of using the edge of the rectangle to scrape it off of the spoon, and that kind of creates the natural hump. All right, well, I think that's good enough for a first pass. It doesn't have to be shaped perfectly because what we're going to do next is we're going to have an opportunity to push it around a little bit. But you can basically see I have it tapering down to nothing around all the edges. It's not necessary because, like I mentioned before, we have about a 1/16 of an inch lip there. But we're going to actually add some ballast grains on top of this that's going to give it the final texture. And to do that, I have this old jewel case box filled with ballast. Open it up here. And I just use this as a tray and press this down into it to get it evenly coated. And we'll tap that to get any loose grains off. And now we can use the dry surface to kind of pat things into place and shape those humps the way we want them shaped. So while that is still wet, I'll take the back edge of a X-Acto blade and kind of go along the edge to give that a trim. And do that on all four sides so that we don't have it too tight. Once it's dry, I'll use a sander and sand that down a little bit to make sure we've got a loose fit. And I think we're good. We'll let this dry for a while. And after that, it'll be time to paint it. Now we've had a chance to spray paint it just with some cheap black from a rattle can of spray paint, just to give it a base coat. But this is not the final finish. I'm going to use a power sander here just to take down the sides of this and thin it down so that it'll slide in and out with ease. And then we'll finish this up with a little bit of weathering and painting. Alright, so this is about the level we want. We want to be able to lift that up and have it pop out so that we can grab it without disturbing the car too much. The car will have a little bit more weight to it when the wheels are on there, so it hopefully won't disturb it too much. I might actually... the goal is to be able to just pop that out without jostling the car. So I might sand this down just a touch more, but that's the idea behind it. There. So I think that's good. We can go ahead and finish this one up now. Alright, so we've got our load ready for final painting, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to weather it sort of the same way I weather all my rolling stock, which is to use chalk powders and put that on dry and then go over that with a wash of black. So first off, let's go ahead and make up that wash. I'm just going to use ebony black acrylic. Just take a drop of that and then some water. Got a little syringe here to help any way you can get the water in there. This is not any particular ratio, it's mostly going to be water, no special mix to it, but we are going to need a fair amount of it, so go ahead and get that ready to go. The other part of it is just to take a dark gray chalk. I don't use black, I use a dark gray. And I just use the back of the blade to scrape off some chalk, create a little reservoir that I'm going to use. And I'll just basically apply this all over the coal load. And what this ends up doing is it produces a very ultra flat look, a matte finish to it, and that makes it look more like ore dug out of the ground. Now you're probably thinking coal is not very flat. It has some very shiny faces, and we'll get to that. I think that should be enough. So I'll just take a dry brush, very soft bristled brush, and just kind of brush this all over. And because this is not black, when the wash is black, you'll get some slight tonal variation from highs to lows. That'll make the detail stand out a little bit better. Alright, so we got it very liberally powdered up. Now we just take and apply the wash right over the top of that. And it'll soak up quite a lot of this. So we'll just get this applied, and then we'll set it aside to dry, and then we'll come back and we'll do some highlighting. Okay, so now that that's had a chance to dry, I'll show you the secret sauce that really makes it shine. Literally, it's acrylic gloss medium. This is a super heavy gel, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's amounts to dry brushing, almost dry brushing. I have a little bit more paint on the brush than what you would normally have for dry brushing. And I'll just kind of touch the tops of some of the grains here, and that'll pop those ones out. The rest of the body is going to be very flat, so you get this mix of sparkly, shiny cut faces like you would have of coal, mixed with a very flat black for the rest of it. So I'll get just a little bit of paint on there and just kind of touch the tops. And if you get a little bit more in some areas, that's okay. This is just going to randomly pick out some spots and give you a little bit of shine and glow in certain areas. And so we'll just let that dry. I'll show you the other thing I like to do. I like to take a Sharpie and label on the underside which car it belongs to. And so each of my coal loads is specifically built for a certain car. This one for WP&P, number 3127. That way I know that this is a fit for that car. And some of the cars might have different ribs or different, slightly different dimensions inside. So it's not true that any 55-ton load is going to fit in any 55-ton car. That way I can keep them straight. And so that's all there is to it. Maybe I'll try taking a close-up shot of this once it's dry and finish that. By doing this, all of my cars have unique looking coal loads. I avoid having that standard hump profile that you get with the cast plastic loads. Plus, this has a little bit of weight to it, so there is a difference between a loaded and an unloaded hopper. All that remains for me now to do is to do weathering. The weathering I do the same way with the chalks and the wash. So I'll usually do the weathering at the same time I do these, because I've got the wash ready to go and I've got the chalk powders out. So that's probably my next step with this car, and that'll finish it up and get it ready for the road.